Thank you very much. I'm very much excited to have this opportunity to go through this interview. Question 1. Please tell us about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies? My name is David Odongo. I hold a bachelor's degree in education. I'm a teacher by profession. I'm currently employed by Kenyan government under Teacher Service Commission. I've taught for 13 years, got an opportunity to interact with diverse kind of learners, an opportunity that have really helped me gain a number of skills that include leadership, honesty, empathy, and patience. Over the periods again, I've really developed interest to see that my learners prosper and become lifelong learners and to be responsible citizens of the world. My hobbies include handball, playing basketball, and also nature walk. Question number 2. What motivated you to become a teacher for the subject for which you are applying for? This question I'll respond to it by the kind of experience that I went through as a young child. I had an inquisitive kind of, I have an inquisitive kind of personality where I was questioning a number of things around me. That one actually made me to develop a lot of interest in science. When I went to high school, my interest developed further, and my keenness to teaching learners came when we experienced a problem with teacher shortage, when there are no teachers in school. So I would get an opportunity to take my fellow students through the learning process. And that's how I decided to meet this gap that was existing during that time, and that's how I became a teacher, something that I really enjoy because it helped me make changes through into the learner's life. Tell us about your involvement in curricular activities that you could coach or supervise. I am a national certified coach in referee in handball, and I'm also a coach of the same. I've trained my students up to the regional level. Last year, 2023, we managed to participate up to the regional level, and we became the runners-up, an achievement that me and my students are very, very proud of. This year, again, we expect to improve and go up to the national level. Question 4. What subject have you taught and at what age level? I'm a teacher of chemistry and biology, and currently I'm teaching high school students between the age 11 to 19. 5. How do you prepare to teach your lessons, and what do your lesson plan include? As a teacher, preparation is part and parcel of the teaching, and you must be able to prepare well. This is important to help in order to help the learners achieve the outcome, the perfect, effective outcome of the learning process. First of all, must state clearly the objectives. These are the learning outcome that I expect my learners to achieve at the end of the lesson. 2, instructional materials and the equipment. These are materials and instruments that my learners will use in the learning process, in the activities of the learning, in order to help them achieve the outcome of the intended outcome of the process. Then there are strategies which I must also be able to consider. What are the effective ways and the easy ways that is going to help my learners achieve the intended purpose of our lesson? This must be considered based on their ability and their interest, so that they get it easier in order to achieve these outcomes. Then I also consider, very importantly, the assessment. I must assess how my students are going through the learning process. This is going to help me understand my learners and also see if I can be able to adjust appropriately in order to achieve these objectives, or if I'm supposed to redo this lesson so that my learners can be maximized on the learning process. Then I also consider closure and also independent practices. This is also part and parcel that's also going to expose to me and my students on if the objectives were met and is it appropriate and was it doable by my students. Question 6. Talk about 2 teaching strategies, or methods that you effectively use in your classroom. In my classroom, I prefer using student-centered teaching kind of method. So in this case, I usually consider collaborative learning. This is where the learners work in small groups where we assign duties and responsibilities and they carry out themselves. Then we can be able to have some kind of presentation so that I can be able to see and assess if my learners are able to internalize the concept that we've been going through. This gives them an opportunity to socialize, to learn how to be able to interact and how to communicate. Number two, I also use what is called inquiry-based, where we can be able to pose open-ended questions. Probably the student go and work on it, and then I may be able to give the methods and procedures on how they are going to achieve, maybe are going to work on this question. And then the learners come, and then they can also be able to do a presentation. And also we can be able to engage experimental proceedings in order, like in science, we like doing a lot of experiments. So my student may be able to engage in experiments and come up with the solutions to the questions at hand. Question 7. When someone enters your classroom, describe the learning activities in which the learners are engaged. If one enters my class, my student will majorly be engaged in a method known as think, pair, and share. This is where the content at hand or the question at hand, the student may, students will be engaged in personal discussions. Then they can be able to pair, and then they discuss in small groups. And then each group, we shall give an opportunity to present before the class so that we can be able to see if this information has been captured by the student. We can also be able to reinforce on where the concept not coming out clearly, or maybe to challenge few misconceptions that may be coming as the learning process continues. Number two, I also like using interactive demonstration. Interactive demonstration whereby the learners interact in an experimental procedure. They are working with equipments together, and they could be doing it on their own or with minimal guidance, so that we give them I give them an independence as they work in those small groups, as they demonstrate. If there's any kind of involvement that where I'm supposed to come in, I'll be able to come in to give a little direction here and there, and eventually we shall be able to regroup as a class and then look into the actual demonstration the students were doing through, and then we clarify any misconception that had been realized. Question 8. What methods do you use to evaluate your students' progress? There are three methods that have worked for us in the process of evaluating my students' learning process. One is formative. Formative is continuous process where we actually want to find out how the learning process had been instantaneously or after a short while, so that we can be able to adjust the learning process or the learning activities so that the learners can be able to get a quick feedback without waiting for a long period of time. Number two, I also use summative method of assessment. This is done after a given period of time, for example, after term, to able to evaluate the learning process over a long period of time, and also for placement. After the exam, it's assessed, and then they can be placed to the next level. Sometimes, and I usually employ diagnostic method of assessment, where I can be able to get feedback, quick feedback from my students to diagnose the change in behavior, the change of the learner's approach to the learning, so that it gives me that opportunity to know my learners quickly and maybe respond quickly to any requirement that my learners may need. Question 9. If you use technology in your classroom, describe how you incorporate it into your teaching. Describe any experiment you have with a smartboard. Technology is part and parcel of the current teaching in the 21st century. So it goes without saying that it has to be incorporated in the learning process. I've used a number of ways to incorporate this in my class. One, in many lessons, I introduce videos with the concept that I would like my learners to learn. This video uh, raise their interest and bring their attention to the work at hand. I've also used Google Classroom, where I bring my students together through that fora, and then we are able to discuss a number of concepts, give assignments, mark them, and give them feedback, even when they are away from school. I've also used multimedia kind of approach to my learning, whereby I take pictures on some of the objects or some of the things that my student may not have been gotten opportunity to see, and bring them to class. We have a board where we can be able to post them to encourage learning, to prepare them, and also be able to elicit their interest so that they can be able to know and interact with these objects, even though they may not be able to see them face to face. Unfortunately, I've never gotten an opportunity to work with a smartboard, though I understand it's very easy to work with. It's something that I know I can learn very fast and be able to use it. In my school, we don't have such a facility. We only use a whiteboard and a pen, and that's majorly what we use in our school. I know I can learn very fast and use a smartboard. Question 10. If you have students who are noisy or non-attentive, share ways you regain their attention without interrupting the lesson. I've worked with a number of ways that have really helped me to gain attention and also to manage noise by individual students in my class. One is by use of sticky notes. This is some information that I have at hand, whereby if I realize that there are one or two students are not attentive and are making noise in class, I move closer to them and then place them on top of the table where they can be able to see it, to warn them that to show them that actually they are not attentive in my class and their attention need to be drawn back. Number two, I also use what is called hand signal. There are certain hand signal that we have learned as a class through the procedures and routines that my students know that a certain signal will mean this. And therefore, when I use a hand signal, a student who is making noise may be able to notice it, and then they are able to keep quiet. If this does not work, I usually try to move closer to them and then engage the class while standing near this kind of students so that they can be able to realize my presence and keep quiet and draw their attention back to me. Number 11, describe the most difficult problem you've had to deal with as a teacher and how did you resolve this problem? I remember when I started teaching, I was teaching in a school where most of my students were coming from very humble background. So I realized over the time that there were chronic absenteeism. Most of the students were not turning up as regular as expected. This one bothered me so much. So I approached my principal and we shared this. So we came up with a solution to this. We realized that most of this, we did a research and realized that most of these students were not coming to school because of lack of the resources and materials that they may be able to need because the parents were not providing them. So we decided with my principal to come up with a solution. So we initiated a project in school that would raise some funds. That was poultry keeping. And we invited these our students to be part and parcel of that project. So we were able to get enough income that would be able to get for us these supplies and therefore returning these students to school. Part of this money was also used to pay their school fee, and these students were able to go through the learning process and they graduated to the next level, something that made us very happy as a community. Question 12. Give an example to show that you are a flexible person and that you can make changes to your teaching methods. This question, I can respond to it by drawing an example which I actually practice in my class. I was teaching a concept in chemistry, that is the first 20 elements of the periodic table. I realized that my students were taking long to master, to understand this given area. So I engaged my students in discussion, and then I gave them choice to come up with ways, creative ways on how they can be able to incorporate learning of the first 20 elements of the periodic table. I gave them some time, and after a while, the student reported back, and we had presentation. I came to realize that my students were very creative. Some of them had composed songs that were including this concept. Some of them came up with boards that were drawn, and they were able to write the symbols so well. Some of them came with small, short skits to be able to demonstrate the first 20 elements. And the class actually was very, very motivated to learn and master the first 20 elements of the periodic table.